Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Cowan-Smith. Tonight, tit-for-tat diplomatic expulsions between Rwanda and South Africa highlight the deepening rift between the countries over allegations that Kigali sent hit squads abroad after exiled dissidents. Also, the International Criminal Court finds Congolese warlord Germain Katanga guilty of involvement in a brutal attack on a village, but the decision to acquit him of using child soldiers doesn't sit well with many. And as the world prepares to celebrate International Women's Day this Saturday, we head to Senegal and meet the lawyers making it free and easy for women there to get legal advice. First up, a Congolese rebel leader has been convicted of being an accessory in a bloody attack on a village in 2003. Nicknamed Simba, Germain Katanga is only the second person to be convicted by the International Criminal Court since it was set up in 2002.
After months of hearings, Germain Katanga, DR Congolese warlord who faced trial at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, listened to Judge Cott's verdict. Germain Katanga was found guilty of war crimes committed in the Ituri province of DR Congo.
This chamber finds Germain Katanga guilty of complicity to crimes committed on February 24th, 2003. Murders that are crimes against humanity.
The court acquitted Germain Katanga of using child soldiers and of sexual crimes because of a lack of evidence. Germain Katanga was the commander of the Patriotic Resistance Force of Ituri that led an attack against the village of Bogoro in February 2003 in the northeast of DR Congo. The militia killed 200 people, raped, pillaged and destroyed the village. The attack was supported by the Lendu ethnic group against the villagers from the Hema ethnic group. Inter-ethnic violence between the two groups left 60,000 people dead.
For more on the Katanga verdict, we spoke earlier to Alain Waikani, a former child soldier for the UPC militia that rivaled Katanga's fighters. Now, the UPC's leader, Thomas Lubanga, was also condemned of rights abuses by the ICC, but unlike Katanga, was found guilty of recruiting children. Alain tells us he believes that on that issue, the court made the wrong decision today.
It's a feeling of disappointment because talking about FRPI today and without talking about sexual violence, I think that it's vague and it cannot be explained in Ituri and to people of Ituri because FRPI is known as one of the movements that recruited child soldiers and also who was using during the war, he was taking in hostage young ladies to be like a sexual slave. So I think that it's a big mistake that the court made today, and this decision cannot be a satisfaction for people of Ituri. And this is my feeling, the feeling of disappointment, as I say in the beginning.
Now, Alain, we heard earlier today that the UN's representative in Democratic Republic of Congo saying that she hoped that Katanga's conviction could serve as a warning. Now, do you really think that a judgment from the International Criminal Court will really have any effect on armed groups still operating in the region?
Maybe in the other side it can have the impact, but in Ituri I don't think, because we as people of Ituri, we know that the real people supposed to be normally, who should face the court today, they are not there. And because you know the situation of Ituri, many people was behind the war in Ituri. And we do believe that Germain Katanga found himself in The Hague because it was possible for him, for people who sent him to send him there. But I don't think that the positive impact may come through this decision, simply because the decision of making peace in Ituri was not through the arrest of Mr. Germain Katanga or Thomas Lubanga. But the real people, the real criminals should be behind the court, and they should face the court as other people are facing today.
Alain Waikani there speaking to us earlier from Kinshasa. In other news, tensions between Rwanda and South Africa have ratcheted up, with the two nations issuing tit-for-tat diplomatic expulsions on Friday. Kigali's kicked out 6 South African embassy staff after Pretoria gave 3 Rwandan officials just 72 hours to leave. It follows allegations from an exiled Rwandan general that Kigali had sent a hit squad to his home in Johannesburg earlier this week. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
For several years now, South Africa has welcomed on its territory some of the main Rwandan opposition leaders. That's the main reason why the relationship between the two nations is tense. On New Year's Day, one of these leaders, Patrick Karegeya, was found strangled to death in his hotel in Johannesburg. This week, the house of another politician, Kayumba Nyamwasa, was attacked by armed men. Rwandan President Paul Kagame denied any involvement, but he declared that treason had consequences. It's in this context that Pretoria expelled 3 Rwandan diplomats this Friday. Kigali reacted swiftly and sent home 6 South African diplomats. Yet for a long time, the two governments were close. It's only in the last 10 years that analysts have noticed a change, and that's because of a third country, Joseph Kabila's Congo.
I think South Africa just realized that strategically it wasn't really all that interesting to be on the Rwandan side of the coin and not to engage with Kinshasa. I mean, Kinshasa, after 2003, was on the right track internationally. It was accepted as a legitimate government, a legitimate transition government that was moving towards legitimate elections.
For South Africa, the economic potential of the Congolese giant is far greater than that of Rwanda. Last year, President Jacob Zuma signed a deal with his counterpart, Joseph Kabila, promising to buy electricity from a huge Congolese hydroelectric project called Inga. Their cooperation is also military. In 2013, South African troops helped the Congolese army defeat the M23 rebels. According to UN experts, these rebels were supported by the Rwandan government.
Day 5 of the murder trial of South African Olympian Oscar Pistorius, and today the judge heard testimony from his ex-girlfriend who said that he'd once fired his gun from the sunroof of his car. Samantha Taylor claimed the track star did so after a police officer stopped him for speeding. She was testifying over a lesser charge of reckless handling of a firearm, but claimed he always had his on him. Pistorius denies deliberately shooting his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp dead last Valentine's Day. He says he mistook her for an intruder. If found guilty, he could face life in prison. This Saturday marks International Women's Day. Organisations across the globe are highlighting efforts to celebrate the achievements of women and raise awareness of the challenges they specifically face. Well, our correspondent sent us this report from Senegal about an association there that's offering free advice in the hope of levelling the playing field between the genders when it comes to legal representation.
Marie Delphine is both an activist and lawyer. Her mission in life to ensure justice for all, especially women ignored by the system. In this legal boutique in the centre of Dakar, there's an open-door policy to cater for those who could normally never afford a lawyer.
What we do is to bring justice to locals, those who could normally never afford to pay legal fees. We give them assistance and advice for free.
Victims of rape and violence are the most frequent visitors. This lady, who's concealed her identity, was beaten by her husband for years. It was only when he sprayed her with acid that she finally turned to the legal boutique.
He poured something on me. I immediately caught fire. I screamed and screamed and screamed. My neighbours helped me. He used to threaten me a lot, saying that if I told anyone who was beating me up, he would lock me up.
In addition to one-on-one consultations, a hotline has been set up to help people who live in the countryside. Experts in all areas of law are on standby.
You can come here for cases related to family law, like divorce, for example. It may also be related to inheritance, access to land, and even labour laws.
Equal rights to land and promoting women's access to land ownership is a priority for Senegal.
The paradox is that only 1% of women possess their own land, despite the fact that some 70% of the workforce in rural areas are women.
90% of the population do not speak French. We have to explain the legal system to them in their own language, so women just need to access to this crucial legal information.
Through the hard work of these voluntary lawyers, thousands of women have benefited from advice and assistance that they never would have found elsewhere. It's not just about promoting equal rights, but also empowering women.
And finally, North African culture and creativity are wowing crowds across Marrakech as the Moroccan city hosts its 5th bienniale. Art, acrobatics, music, theatre, it's all on show. International and local artists head over every 2 years to take part in the contemporary festival. This year, the Bank of Maghreb threw open its doors and invited visitors in to examine the treasures within. And no, it wasn't cash, but an exhibition of art, including a Formula One engine refashioned from local materials. Elsewhere in the city, designers are making the old from the new, firing up 3D printers to create traditional Moroccan wares. Well, that wraps up African News from me for this week. Join us again, though. We'll be back with more next week. Take care.